You are Locked On Hawks Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good afternoon, Hawks fans. Yes, usually I am so used to saying good evening. However, good afternoon on this one after a big-time win for the Atlanta Hawks playing in the afternoon. Something a little bit unusual, right, E-Dub? I would say so myself. Appreciate everybody for joining us for yet another episode of the Locked On Hawks Postcast. I am your host for the evening, DeShaun Tate. Got my dude, E-Dub is what we call him, Edwin Powell from the HawksBeat podcast, from the HawksBeat Podcast, host of. Dude's been covering the Atlanta Hawks for a long time, I think in his 11th season or something like that. So I appreciate him for bringing his expert analysis and joining us. Of course, we got a ridiculously crazy show lined up for you guys on the evening. Going to be talking about not only this Hawks win, but how it impacts their opportunity to be able to play for the Emirates Cup after partaking in winning not only this game, but potentially the entire group of what it will take in order to advance to the Emirates Cup, to be able to participate in winning that. Of course, talking about some reliable reserves, this bench that has been really just ridiculously crazy, the contribution, the production that they've been able to bring, the kind of chemistry, playing well within one another. We'll talk to E-Dub a little bit on how they're able to get that done. And even more so, the team up next that has kind of been a little bit in a thorn in the Hawks side a little bit, being the Charlotte Hornets. We'll break some of that game down for you guys as well. However, not before I remind you that this episode of the Locked On Hawks Postcast is brought to you by FanDuel, where you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets only if, of course, you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com. E-Dub, how you been, brother? It's been a little while. Used to seeing you down there at the game, and I don't know if they let me in anymore, man. That popcorn was too good, man. I start eating too much of that popcorn at the half, and they don't let your boy up in there no more as often as they did. Love those guys over there. I know you were over there quite a bit, and go check out some games, different shoot-arounds, practices, things of that nature. 117-101 win for the Atlanta Hawks in a back-to-back games over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Is this a matter of like styles make fights? I know that's thrown around a lot of times. Is it just a really bad matchup for Cleveland, or are we just kind of like really starting to see the Hawks kind of turn the corner a little bit, especially now that everybody's healthy?
Oh man, that's a good question. First of all, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, man. You know, we go way back. Shouts out to my girl Tanitra as well. It's a joy to fill in and talk some Hawks basketball. But to answer your question, man, I think it might be a little bit of all of those things you named, right? When you have guys come back from injury, sometimes it takes time to gel a little bit. We might be seeing a little bit of a gelling process between those guys in the second unit. Sometimes you just match up good against a team, and sometimes you don't match up. And it is crazy to say that I think the Hawks match up better versus the Cavs than they do the Wizards. But in the NBA, where it is a very hard league to win, that may be the truth. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of truth in all of those scenarios that you mentioned.
Yeah, I think that's, it's one of those things where we see, and let me just definitely say this first. I mean, FanDuel has been so good to me. I kind of saw, this coming. I saw this happening. And the reason I say that is because, like, I figured the most Hawks thing ever would be if the Hawks found a way to win 2 of these games. Now, obviously, coming into it on Wednesday, you look at it and you say, okay, they probably don't stand a chance, right? Not only is the Cleveland Cavaliers one of the best teams in the NBA, but they had only lost 1 game at that point. In addition to the fact that they were like unbeaten at home. And I'm just thinking like, that has Atlanta Hawks win written all over it. If not nothing else, certainly on the spread or something like your first half, because you figure they'll keep it close. But it's just you after a while, being a person who's honestly not from here, however, been watching and covering this team long enough and seeing them and some of the different trends that they go on, you can kind of see that, this could be something that's sneaky and kind of scary. I think, when you look at guys like Donovan Mitchell, right? And I figure something that they would have to do is to try to, you're never going to be able to really like stop him, but you have to be able to try to contain him and get him to do unorthodox or uncharacteristic things. And even more so seeing the depth that Cleveland plays with. And, definitely like to get out there and run and things like that. What has been the most eye-popping thing or the biggest difference-making thing from what you've seen in these 2 games combined for the Hawks, especially the one on today, where it just really seemed like both of these games, the Hawks didn't have to earn their money or work as hard to get their shots as much as Cleveland did?
Yeah, so of course the obvious answer would be the bench play. DeAndre Hunter, Bogey, Onyeka Okongwu, those are usually the first 3 guys when they go with this typical rotation. And Dre came in and he just, immediately asserted himself in today's game. And that was one of my pregame questions was, I don't know if the bench will give you 60 again, but I wonder like what they will give you. And they down there didn't get almost, And so if you look at just 2-game sample set, obviously it's the bench play of DeAndre Hunter, who has just been phenomenal over the last 48 hours, and that's something, it makes it so much easier for everybody else, the lower Trey's usage, finally get him some time on the bench. It helps out Jalen. It just stretches things out when that second unit is able to put the ball in the basket and able to get a few stops, So, you got to kind of tip your cap. And again, I think we mentioned it a little bit earlier, the gelling process. I asked Trey about that last game, and he was like, that could be something, but I don't want to use it as an excuse. It might be true, though. You know what I mean? So, I think we're seeing a little bit of everything.
I think another thing that you had left out, and while those were very good points that you made, is we're seeing them in these 2 games shoot like so well from the perimeter. And in some instances, I think the last game, I'm not sure about this one, but I know the last game, I think they shot better from 3 than they did from the field, which is like kind of unheard of, to be honest. And with them shooting north of 40%, I'm pretty sure, in both of those games, that's got to be, a beneficial asset to, what they're trying to do. And obviously, Quinn Snyder, talking more and more about making sure that they are, getting more threes up and things like that. Reese Shea moving very well without the ball, and it's been good. There's this, obviously a scenario where the Hawks were at one point in time undefeated, I think 2-0 at the time of group play. Ended up playing the Chicago Bulls, obviously, and gave the Hawks their first loss in group play to be able to participate and compete for this Emirates Cup. But ended up beating a team like a Cleveland, who's no longer, although they're one of the best teams and best record in the NBA, no longer able to compete for the Emirates Cup because of the loss on today. So what is this? What does winning a cup like this, or even participating for something like this, if you're the Atlanta Hawks, being able to potentially go to Las Vegas, what has to happen in order for them to do so? All of these different things, because a lot of people aren't really that familiar as much still with the in-season tournament. So just catch the people up to speed a little bit on what it's going to take in order for the Atlanta Hawks to be like a more than just a shoe-in or a write-in on this, and what it could mean for them to not just compete for it, but potentially win it. Because right now, I think that, it's up for grabs for just about anybody.
Yeah, so the Cliff Notes about this is the NBA in-season tournament, or the Emirates Cup. It's just the in-season tournament that, that the NBA has adopted. The championship semifinals is played in Vegas. Guys get a little extra bonuses in their checks if you win. And it's a good thing, because I look at it from a standpoint of guys who like to compete. It's just another way for them to compete,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They all have these different courts that are very bright in color.
Mm-hmm. Very. That's one way of putting it,
to say the least, But the Hawks have done typically well in their division with like Boston and Chicago and I think Washington. I think that is who is in their group. And so because they won today, they have an opportunity to make it to the next round in the tournament. They would just need for Boston to knock off Chicago, and then they would be the winner of that group. Now, if Chicago does happen to win, Atlanta still is in play for a wild card. You still have some things going on, some games that need to be played to see if they get that wild card. But the main point is, if Boston beats Chicago, then the Hawks will have won this division. And that's a good thing, you know what I'm saying? Because this is a young team. Any type of experience you get, whether it be playoffs, whether it be play-in, whether it be in-season tournament, it's going to be good for the young guys. So that's currently where they stand.
No, it makes perfect sense to me. And I can't wait to get a chance to see them, compete for it. And it definitely does add a little bit of a different element to things when you start looking at the way that guys compete. It feels like playoff basketball almost, a little bit to a degree. So we'll get into a little bit about some of the role players, some of the reserves. I think E-Dub spoke a little bit earlier in this segment about some of the bench contribution and things of that nature, some of the production that they're able to bring. We'll talk about that on the other side after this break. All right. So, have you ever heard of this Skylight frames? A lot of people are going to say, what the heck is that, DeShaun? I have absolutely no idea what it is that you're talking about. Sometimes I'm curious. I want to ask people, what do you celebrate with to stay connected to the people who are far away? Do you sometimes struggle to find the perfect gift during the holidays? Right now, everybody's out doing their Black Friday shopping, want to know what they should consider, but we have some pretty good ideal gifts out there for some of you. So that being said, it only takes one single tap from your phone to send new photos to a frame across the country. It's the fastest and easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. They'll feel so much better about being connected to you. There's, it looks, something looks gorgeous in your home, and, it's a touchscreen game changer to a degree. And there's a gift mode to it. And there's multiple sizes to be able to, choose from. So you swipe through your photos to see your new photos that were sent. Tap the heart button to say thank you to the sender. Just a whole new way to be able to share memories. And everybody loves that. This is the time of the year that everybody's, with their loved ones and creating new memories, new babies being born every day, and new additions being added to families and things of that nature. So, if you're missing someone this holiday season and want them to be of your part of your festivities from afar, and maybe gift giving isn't necessarily your love language, but you overthink it and end up winding up with something disappointing or end up being nothing at all. You don't want to have that frown on the face of your loved ones when you guys are doing the Secret Santa gift swaps, and then you're the one that it ends up with something that 365 days from now is not something that not something that can be, nearly as beneficial, or something that, you find under somebody's bed or in the closet stuffed in there and nobody knows where it's at. That being said, as of now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get yourself $20 off of your purchase of a Skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NBA. That's SKYLIGHT frame, FRAME.com/NBA. Get $20 off your purchase right now at skylightframe.com/NBA. Let them know I sent you. That's skylightframe.com/NBA. So, my dude, E-Dub, man, appreciate you again for joining us. For those of you who are living under a rock or wasn't here from the introduction, got my dude, Edwin Powell. We call him E-Dub. He is the host of the HawksBeat Podcast. Make sure you go check him out. Social media handles at HawksBeat. That is at HAWKSBEAT. It's been a heck of a ride so far, particularly for the bench, the bench contribution and those who have been contributing and bringing some production. The crazy part about this, Ed, is that you have DeAndre Hunter, who I'm not sure the last time, forget about just this year, that I've seen him put together, 2 games of 23 plus points, and the numbers that he's got over probably 50 points. Within 2 games combined. Between Bogey, you mentioned Double O, Onyeka as well. Where do you either rank this Hawks team, or just give me a letter grade for how you think that, from a standpoint of the impact that they have had on these wins, and probably just the way that they have been playing, especially on games like tonight? What kind of a letter grade do you give?
Well, if I'm giving it based on the last 2 games, it would be, of course, an A. But if I had to factor in since everyone came back, so I think most of the guys came back on the West Coast trip. Mm-hmm. West Coast trip was a little rough, but expectedly so. You know what I mean? Because they're just coming back, and so there's a gelling process. And so if I factor in all those, I would still give them a solid C, maybe even a B- if I felt generous. You're just looking for the consistency now, and that's the thing with Dre. He can burn, he can get buckets, he can do a lot of good things, but if that knee starts swelling up, it's a
different conversation.
The same with Bogey. Bogey can burn. Bogey's one of my favorite guys as far as shooting in the league. I don't think there's too many that can score like him. But again, that hamstring and whatever ailments he's dealing with, that could be an issue. And so, even Bufkin has had their injury issues. So for me, like the thing, celebrate the back-to-back, celebrate it. But what you're looking for is consistency and health. And so to answer your question, the grade would probably be a C, closer to a B.
Okay. And I always ask people this question whenever they come on the air and join the show. And I appreciate you, of course, for joining the program. We all know that Trey is the number 1 option, Jalen Johnson being the number 2 option. Who is that number 3 scoring option? Who should be that number 3 scoring option? Who's the most equipped? So we're going to ask you to put on your Coach E-Dub hat here for a second. And if you're the coach of this team, just by the way that the roster is constructed and everything that you've seen from this team as of yet so far, where do you feel the most comfortable in terms of feeling like, all right, because, at one point in time, it was like Dyson Daniels, and we didn't know he was going to give us that much offense when we first got him, if I'm being honest. But then you bring in DeAndre off the bench. Now Bogey is healthy, and he's starting to look like he's in the same realm or mode of who's that number 3 scoring option for you? Who should it be? Who will it be from a consistency standpoint once this team kind of gels and understands exactly what they have because everybody's healthy?
Well, for me, it's Bogey, like unequivocally. I could even make an argument that he's at number 2 because his ability to make shots is nobody can make shots on that team like him. Like nobody can shoot like him. Nobody can, he can generate offense. The only thing is his defense is so god awful. But as far as like a scorer, as far as putting the ball in the hoop, it's bogey. And I know we're giving love to Dre, and he's had a tremendous 2 games. But if you're going to look toward the end of the season in the totality, if Bogey stays healthy, knock on wood,
sure.
I think that he's going to be like, easily a second or third scorer for the Hawks. I think that that's the role that he can have, and just because he comes off the bench, that doesn't really mean anything. He's going to get the minutes. He's going to get the shots. You can stay healthy. He's going to be the guy.
Sure thing. And I think that's one of the crazy things about it, Dub, is that, we mentioned things about like, guys like Bogey, where it's you see his offense and it looks so good. He's certainly probably the most pure shooter on this team, right? Spot up, off the dribble, you name it. Defense, like you mentioned, is probably ugly as sin. But yet still, what he's able to give, and he's not a guy that can't play defense because he doesn't try. Like there are definitely more than enough instances where I don't know if it's a lateral movement thing. Sometimes I feel like his shoes are nailed to the floor. But some guys just are not really good at defense. It's certainly not because of a lack of effort. And then talking about someone like a DeAndre Hunter, and I've just always felt that, he's just a lot better for the team off the bench. There's not as much pressure on him. He can be the spark that this team needs in terms of offense coming off the pine. And sometimes it's just better and works out better in situations. Like the only thing about him is, like you said, it's just about keeping him off the IR. He has got to be healthy in every possible way. There's just been too many instances over the last X amount of years where we were having just far too many conversations about what this team could potentially be once they get DeAndre Hunter back. And finally, at least so far, knock on wood and keeping fingers, toes, eyes, T's, and everything else crossed that we won't have to have this conversation. For right now, he's healthy, and it's good to see him looking like a player that can really add something to this Hawks team and makes a huge difference between them adding a number to the left side of the result column or not. Once we come back on the other side of the break, I got a quick question from my dude E-Dub. We are going to talk about one of those pesky opponents that just for whatever reason always seems to find a way to stand in the way of the Atlanta Hawks. So we'll get to that here in just a moment on the other side of this break. Hey, you. Yes, you. I'm talking to you. Are you tired of waking up extra early every Sunday morning trying to figure out how and where to place your bets? Or even how about that delayed text message replies from your own personal bookie who just, I guess, conveniently, whenever it's time for you to cash out, even searching for a home to place your money line spreads or even your over-unders on Thursdays, Sundays, or the big one on Mondays that caps off the work week. Never fear, because the solution is here, and that's only one place that you can turn to. That one place is FanDuel, where, trust me, I felt good about the Atlanta Hawks in these 2 games against the Cleveland Cavaliers, so I put a little something down so I can throw it in Breslin's piggy bank, because Lord knows I'm tired of coming out of my own pocket. If she ain't gonna hurry up and get potty trained, we need some extra funds. Extra funds I get from FanDuel, because it is the only place to go ahead and place your bets. So you can even get ready to tackle the NFL season, for crying out loud, all of their action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app, gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Remember, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Again, FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. E-Dub, big time game coming up, man, on in what, less than 24 hours at this point. I feel like this team hardly ever gets a break. Gonna be traveling on the road, packing up their bags and their luggage, all that good stuff. Traveling just a little far north, so don't got too long of a ride. However, that's kind of been the thorn in the side for this Atlanta Hawks team. I remember coming in. Okay, so I'm trying to remember the last couple of years. What do they play them? Four times every season, I believe it is, if a division opponent.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Okay, yeah. So I remember over the course of the last 2 years, so that being 8 games, coming into this season, the Hawks had lost 6 of the last 8 games against the Hornets. Obviously, they played the Hornets earlier this year, ended up beating the Hornets in one of their many games that they have won so far already this season. But LaMelo Ball has been looking like he's not even human, if I'm just being honest with you. I've seen some 50-point games. It might not always be essentially coming with victories, but what are some of the, I guess, just key things, some of the things that, this team will need, that you'll be looking at for this particular game, things that the Hawks will need to do to, keep from getting another L and keep this winning streak going after these 2 games against Cleveland?
Yeah, that Hornets engine, it goes as far as LaMelo Ball is going to take it. He is he's a fun guy to watch, man.
Yeah, he
is a fun guy to watch. And Brandon Miller is developing into quite the ball player.
Yes,
and that is a very moderate way to put it. And the two of them together are starting to have something that folks are excited about in Charlotte. Now, here's the thing about the NBA. Okay. A lot of times people look at records and they say, "Oh, Charlotte 6-13." They lost 4 in a row. They're 2-8 in their last 10. Throw all that out the way.
Yes, that's
sometimes
right.
It's about matchup, and sometimes a team just has your number. Like Charlotte has really had Atlanta's number over the past 2 to 3 to 4 years since I've been covering them, regardless of how many wins. Again, we talk about the Washington Wizards. Wizards are 2-15.
Right.
The 2 wins that they have are against the
Hawks. Of course it is.
So the Hawks are going to be at a deficit because they're on a second game of a back-to-back after Thanksgiving. So don't be surprised if the energy isn't there, if the legs aren't there. You just coming off a big win. And I'm not saying that, they're going to go down like that. I'm saying that these are things that the typical fan doesn't think about, and so the head of the snake is LaMelo Ball. And luckily for the Hawks, you got a guy in Dyson Daniels that loves to disrupt the head of a snake. I think he's done a good job on Donovan Mitchell those last 2 games, but he's going to have to be peak Dyson, just get into him and make it physical for him and hope that Brandon Miller doesn't kill you. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a really fun matchup, to be honest with you. I was going to go to the game, but I had some things come up at the last minute. Charlotte's a nice little trip to take, but it's gonna be a battle, man.
Always a lot of fun going to visit the people up there in Charlotte. Got some family up there myself, and of course, it always helps that there's a ton of people that loves college basketball up that way too. So it always makes it a little bit easier for me. But almost like a little mini Atlanta. And you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. You kill the head, the body will follow. And the head of that snake obviously is LaMelo Ball. And sometimes he can get out of whack and out of sorts and get a little bit out of control. But right now, he's just been playing really good. And how about the Charlotte Hornets, who I think did a phenomenal job in picking up the number 2 pick, like you mentioned, of last year's draft, that being Brandon Miller, because I'm not always sure that Charlotte is the team that is smart enough to not go with the Scoot Henderson instead, and end up going with Brandon Miller. So shout out to them on that. And how about Trey Mann? Trey Mann has looked really good for them as well. We always talk about guys coming off the bench or just guys that are role players, complementary players to the star players, and that is Trey Mann. He's looked really good, finding a way for some of these games to be even mentioned in asserting himself into the starting lineup. Grant Williams, I think they are without. I think that's a significant blow. Maybe not a huge one, but a significant blow. He's kind of like the Draymond Green emotional leader of that team in some ways. The Swiss Army knife maybe does nothing great, but does a lot of things very, very well. So it'll be really interesting. But yes, that is true. The best thing to do is to not get so far ahead of yourself. Hey, listen, I'm just glad that this team, number one, didn't eat too much turkey and found a way to come out and lay a dud against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And then the other thing is just the fact that, hey, just treat the Charlotte Hornets like they're wearing a Cleveland Cavaliers jersey, for crying out loud. And I think that'll just pretty much make everybody much, much happier. Appreciate everybody for coming in and obviously joining us and coming in on the chat and being a part of the program. To my dude E-Dub, man, thank you so much for joining me, and appreciate you for all your patience and even carving out some time for us here on today. Make sure you guys go and give them a follow at HawksBeat, at HawksBeat. My boy's been covering the Hawks, man, for over 10 years, been consistent, persistent, got really, really good content that he puts out there. Really happy to have him on, and really proud of the work that he's been putting out there. This isn't an easy thing to do. Everybody think you could just go up and start cracking a mic and covering teams, and that stuff takes away time from families and everything else. You name it, gas, money, energy, everything else. And to go out there and support this Atlanta Hawks team, we're there. And, I know that E does a very good job at keeping non-biased opinions and, just keeping a close eye to the team, bringing some content that nobody else does. So appreciate him. Again, the host for the HawksBeat podcast at HawksBeat. Everybody, appreciate you for joining us. We'll be right back here in less than 24 hours after we conclude the game. Hopefully resulting in a win for the Atlanta Hawks over the Charlotte Hornets. Appreciate everybody for joining us, and be sure to circle back around in less than 24 so you can be a part of the program. Have a good night.